I want to take the time to welcome you all to Hesham's Half Time. Thank you for tuning in. There are things I need you to understand within this situation of why that acronym exists. The title came from Life's Adjustments. I've lived quite the life, and through trials and tribulations, there was always a need to re-script the original plan. It could have been disaster struck. It could have been difficulties. It could have been struggles. But through all those struggles, here I am, and I finally found my purpose. And it's to sit in front of you today to advocate for you. Now, how did I get there and why? I had health struggles along the way. I started out as an athlete, and I realized I didn't get the greatest coaching. And I took everything within my power with the opportunity to get to the league till I understood my own reference to sports science. I took those applications and then was able to produce with it and opened up a career that way. Through a successful career, 8 years training, I end up with a chronic autoimmune disease called myasthenia gravis. It's a muscle weakening disease. And through my struggles, I would go through the medical system one after another. And I would watch situations in which I would go through the system as just a number. They would treat me like a protocol, as though I was a robot. And through those struggles and the suffering that went along with it, I arrived at this point, coming up with my own plans. So here I am today, sitting here to advocate for you. Throughout these shows, there's a million people I'm going to need to thank. But I'm planning to wait till my 100th show to do so. See, there's this idea in everybody's head about a self-made man. That's a myth. Somewhere along the way, somebody opened the doors for you to get here. Somebody helped you, somebody gave you a break. Now, I'm not saying some of those things weren't earned, but in a lot of cases, it's who you knew, not what you knew. Well, in this particular case, it's both. I'd like to share that with you. When I look back and we look at all these situations, as I go through my stream, again, as I said, I started as an athlete. I was trying my best to make it to the league. I was at one point a scholarship athlete and going through the process. And I realized I didn't get some of the best coaching, that some of the best coaching was really overseas at that time, that the talent pool was so big that the training didn't always reflect it. In a lot of cases, it ended up being just survival of the fittest. In some cases, some of those skills could have been trained even better with more efficiency. As I learned we were behind in science, it brought me to more of the health field. Then we run into 24. I don't get that dream accomplished, but I end up accomplishing others' dreams. So I start working with clients one at a time. Every once in a while, there would be some sort of health roadblock that would keep me from getting to where I wanted to go. This is what really led me to the point of this introductory show. I want to introduce myself. I want to introduce my struggles. I don't plan to harp on them. What I plan to do is advocate for you from where I came from, specifically along the health moniker field. For once, you look around, and when you are stricken with any condition in this country, what you'll find is they'll treat you as a protocol. We'll go through the system. We run this medication, this medication, this medication. You'll even find that most of the times the doctors don't even know why they're running the medication. When I took a deeper look, they're not even able to read blood work. So I'm looking for deficiencies that cause problems. And as you find out, as I have an autoimmune, my autoimmune disease is something called myasthenia gravis. It's a muscle weakening and neurological disease. What you're going to find in that particular process is I'm not supposed to be able to do certain things that all of a sudden I'm able to do. And the reason I became able to do them is I started looking for underlying cause. Now, what we do in this country medically is we treat symptoms. We don't treat causes or effects. And what we're looking for through that process is, how can I get a little closer to it? What was the underlying cause for? You always say, well, what caused this? And they'll say it just happened. We don't know. What we don't know should have looked into, why aren't we looking for a cause? So rather than just treating symptoms and covering up the issues, once I get one system treated, each medication has a side effect, which leads to another symptom. And before you know it, and you'll see a family member like this all the time, they're taking medication every morning that looks like Skittles. And what I mean by that, it's all the colors of the rainbow, 8 or 9 pills at a time, and your kid's not even eating as many Skittles as they are. And somehow we've monikered this as health. You see a skyrocketing format of people left one after another, suffering, shortening of life, chronically ill, but they're not really living their best quality of life. Where this became really an issue for me and why I'm here. It was one thing for me. It was one thing to go through the process. It was one thing to ignore all the attention. But when my own family came for me the same way, just to be correct, this is where it became an issue. I'll start from the beginning. I finally get symptoms to relapse. In 2016, I leave the country with my parents. I forget my toothpaste, and I remember having an argument just over fluoride. And this was the first indicator that I really had a problem, or there was really a problem in this country. I remember saying out loud, I guess I'm not brushing my teeth for the next 2 weeks because most of the toothpaste you'll find has fluoride in it. Now please recognize, fluoride was an endocrine disruptor that they knew about in the 20s because they used it to treat hypothyroidism. So when we talk about fluoride, as we were saying, I left the country with my parents in 2016. Fluoride was a known endocrine disruptor, but apparently most of the medical community was not aware of that, at least early on. In fact, they were fluoriding the water in most cities, specifically in New York, where I'm originally from. What we found in these certain aspects were they used it to treat hypothyroidism in the 20s. And what you'll also find to see is the World Health Organization had listed it as a top 10 endocrine disruptor. If the World Health Organization is calling it a poison, why do I have to explain it to anybody? But we went through the process and I explained to Mom at the time, I left my toothpaste, I wouldn't be brushing my teeth for the next 2 weeks. And I kind of said it anecdotally as a joke, thinking, you know what, I'm going to probably be able to find fluoride free somewhere in Europe. Right. At that particular time, what came out at the particular time, which is very funny, was she's like, fluoride is good for you. And I'm like, you're getting your science from Colgate or CNN? And what we came to find out was, not only was it not, you'll find that the medical community is so married to the process that they learned that they don't even know why. And she wasn't the only one. So we go through the process, and I'll always remember it's a 3-year argument, and I'm explaining to her the World Health Organization listed as a top 10 endocrine disruptor. They're wrong and you're right. She would then, this continues to go on for 3 years, and then one day she brings it up and she says, what does it matter? You don't taste it. My mother was a pharmacist for 30 years. In fact, she was the head of the department at St. Joe's when she retired. And the funny part we noticed about that was this. I mentioned to her, and we found this hilarious, 30 years as a pharmacist, you never filled a script for transdermal medication? She said, I have. Huh, how's that work? You don't swallow it. Finally, I had the mic drop moment I was looking for, and the conversation was over. But it took 3 years. So what you find is people don't want to be wrong. They don't care about getting it right. And we learned that through the COVID situation. How many people with these vaccines, this vaccine, that vaccine, oh, you anti-vaxxer, oh boy, you conspiracy theorist. Okay, last I looked, Congress spent $1.6 billion on an investigation into the COVID era. And in that investigation into the COVID era, they found that the conspiracy theorists weren't conspiracy theorists at all, because they were correct. So apparently you didn't care about the result. You cared about being right more than anyone's health. Now, when we bring up these topics, and the COVID one is going to be pretty controversial, but if you look on the CDC website, you're going to find that cardiomyopathy within gentlemen from 15 to 40 as a warning over the COVID vaccine. You won't find that on CNN. I can't imagine why. Could it possibly be because every other commercial is a drug company and that's how they're staying afloat and funded? My father had a saying when I was a kid. It was, follow the money, stupid. And if you're not really following the funding, how do we know where we're arriving at that particular point? So, to get through the dogma, I would rather get it right than be right. 3 years ago, I'm on a ventilator. I had about 4 or 5 relapses before then. 2 of them I bled out of my head. 1 of them I broke an actual bone in my skull. So when I look back at all these things, I don't care if the doctor was arrogant. I don't care if he wasn't arrogant. If they had a plan, I would have taken it from anybody. I just wanted to not suffer anymore. So plain and simple, this show is to start to advocate for you. Because nobody advocated for me. And even my own family went after me. And where I really started this show, and I want to dedicate this to my daughter. She's not really old enough to understand all of this yet, but she will one day. When she was getting ready towards school age and needed to go to daycare, they asked for certain vaccines. And when I look back at the vaccines, there was no testing for any of them, and I couldn't find any. My family, specifically my sister, who, by the way, is Big Pharma for the 4th consecutive employer, gets on the table and says, I'm wrong, this, that. But what they never seem to want to produce is any research. I didn't know she won the Nobel Prize, but apparently she must have. I then had an uncle who's an acclaimed vascular surgeon get on the table basically the same way and say he went through the research. But I don't know if you've all watched lately. There's been a series of Senate hearings where the premier physician at every call, under subpoena, under oath, says there were no efficacy studies ever done. So I'm not really sure what he was looking at. But I do kind of question that, don't you? Apparently the love of wanting to be right is more than the love of wanting to treat people. Now, if you really look closely, you're going to find something else that's very funny with this. The CDC director, and you all know who, former CDC director, let's say, and you all know who he is, and it starts Mr. F, and we'll just leave it like that, rather than call him by name, but you all know who it is. Under subpoena, under oath, under the current, with being sued by the current head of human health. Yes, you should know he's an attorney who made his name, well, his family name is one thing, but made his name suing drug companies. And he went under subpoena, under oath, and asked for the efficacy studies. And he said there were no efficacy studies done, and there never would be any. So if they never commissioned any efficacy studies, you are giving your children drugs that were never tested, and you're vaccinating them with it. When we change to vaccines and we understand 2 things, I want you to understand a couple of things in this particular case. This isn't the only avenue where there was no testing done and we continue to give it to people. Treatments I went through to get to this point. Medication. Why? Because even if you took a vaccine and you took it for a flu shot, how did they kill the dead virus? Because there's only a couple of dead viruses, there are only a couple live viruses they're giving, and they're usually to pregnant mothers to not hurt the baby. Therefore, the dead virus is typically killed by mercury, and you'll see now they're pulling that completely out of every vaccine. They didn't do that prior. It's on the warning label, and it's on the insert. And it's funny how this works. I had a reaction to a medication years ago, an immunosuppressant. The warning label is longer than War and Peace, and everyone's telling me it's in my head. I remember being absolutely devastated and pulling over. And I remember having a conversation with my mother because I thought that was my advocate. And I remember saying to her, I'm done taking the mycophenolate. And I remember her response, be done taking the mycophenolate. And she knew I was ready to fight, so she didn't want to fight. And I knew she was at work. And I remember saying to her, I'm not asking you, and I'd rather you bury me upside down. And the response was, well, why? So my critics can kiss my ass. I'd rather die on my own. She would later inform me that there were 5 half-lives in the medication, which mean I'd be fine by Friday. Well, I fell off the stairs before that, but When I did get out of the hospital, magically I had all my functions back. I realized something. It really was the medication. She got one thing right. It had 5 half-lives. But the trauma and the suffering that I went through for the previous month and a half was kind of crazy. The fact that I'm being looked at as some sort of quack really, really stuck on me. So I'm here to advocate for you today. There's a warning label on the medication, probably because somebody else got it too. Don't you think? Now, going forward in this show, there's a number of things I want you to understand. I'm going to bring on guests that are going to give you real health ideals. They're going to go over reading blood work. The next funny part I found, I would go from one physician to another physician, and they're wondering why I'm testing for certain things, for certain markers. I had to educate and advocate for myself. Why? My mother is rather ill. Years ago, when she started to have symptoms, I told her what to look for on the blood work. I told her with certainty, and I did it rather arrogantly and defiantly. And I did so to get her attention because I knew I wouldn't be able to do so. That still didn't work. Unfortunately for all of this, I was correct. Going forward, I would love other people to advocate for you, to see, look at these markers, check these markers. I've since done this for a number of other people who, as clients of mine, you will see on the show. Whether blood work markers, deficiencies, treatment, and they went on to live a very productive life. Again, nobody's advocating for anybody anymore. I was really left out in the wind. How I got back to this point is what you're going to see in future shows and journeys, along with some of my, we're going to call them friends, who helped me along the way. When you look forward in this process, please understand, I'm going to be rather demonstrative. The passion's going to come out. But please evaluate the substance. Telling me because I said so is not science. Screaming like a donkey, follow the science when none of it exists, is a clown show. Giving me some marketing ad you saw on CNN is a joke. Everybody has an agenda. Whose agenda would that be? Please look at the agenda. And again, like my father would say as a kid, follow the money, stupid. When I look back, and I want to give you guys this one, my father said one other line, and I'm going to quote him a number of times in this because he really impacted my life, obviously. So you know he passed a couple of years ago. But the other line he would say to me is, the greatest investment was the investment in human capital. So when I say that, in this life, while you're counting all your money, recognize something. They didn't bury him with a trust, even if he had one. Well, he had one, but we'll get to that. But they buried him in a box with nothing else. So recognize something. The legacy you leave on this earth is who you impacted. If we go back to basics and we go back to general health and we talk about sunlight and morning rituals and hot and cold exposures and red light therapy and detoxing, which all have their place, it's got to start with a purpose. It's got to revolve after 8 hours sleep. It's got to revolve with natural nutrition. It's got to come into a place where, this is what we were meant to do, this is what we were evolved to do, and this is our purpose. The inflammation levels have got to rise. Now, I could bring out all the statistics in the world to tell you the system's broken. You already know it's broken. There's a saying on Wall Street, pigs get fed, hogs get slaughtered. And some people got rather selfish and pushed their own agenda. I'm here to advocate for you. Through these shows, you're going to learn a lot of things. Some of them will be about camaraderie. Some of them will be about tribe. Some of them will be about purpose. Some of them will be about sexual function. Some of them will be about overall health. Some of them will be about relationships. Some of them will be about blood work, health, longevity, and quality of life. There's an old saying, kind of goes like this. You have all the problems in the world until you have a health problem, and then you have one problem. I look forward to introducing you to some of these guests. I look forward to educating you on this. I want to give back to you. Always feel free to respond, even on the bottom of the YouTube page, as I'd sit there and answer questions all day. If somebody derives any help from any of this, I fulfilled my purpose. I do a lot of things. I strong arm a lot of people. I make no secret about this, but I do it for everybody's best interest, because there's nobody who can walk away and tell you otherwise. But I'm here today by the blessing of God, but I'm also here today by the ability, by the one skill he really gave me, to be relentless and turn over every door. I thank you for your time, and I look forward to future endeavors, and I can't wait for the next show. And I want to welcome you to Hesham Half Time and the experience. Thank you.